Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Super Speak Sundays. I'm your host, James the Orator. And as you know, we just identify ordinary people who have gone on to do extraordinary things. And today is no different. We will continue to bring the stories and the information that are going to be transformational, not just to my life, but to your life as well. We want to see change. We want you to do things that you've never done before. Sometimes we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and that's the way that we grow in this thing we call life. And so today, like no other, we continue to bring guests on who are willing to tell their story and share information that, again, that's transformational. This guest today, we've had her on before, and she was on with her dad, Andrea Morehead. If you remember, those of you who are from Indianapolis, you've seen her time and time again, on our 10 o'clock news, 5 o'clock news. I mean, she was the face of Indianapolis. But you know what? Today we have her on, and she's gonna tell us some things that you may not know. And so let me first start off by reading her bio. Get some popcorn because it's good information. Andrea Morehead, an Emmy Award-winning journalist, spent 21 years as the main weekday evening anchor of the 5 p.m., 5:30 p.m., 6 p.m., 10 p.m., and 11 o'clock p.m. broadcasts at NBC WTHR in Indianapolis, Indiana. She has field experience worldwide in national events, including the 2009 presidential inauguration of U.S. President Barack Obama, the 2002 Final Four in Atlanta, the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, Utah, the 2000 NBA Championship in Los Angeles, California, and the 2000 Summer Olympics in Sydney, Australia. On June 5th, 2020, Andrea anchored her last newscast after literally walking off the job without warning. She now speaks about navigating environments that disrespect, mistreat, and marginalize women and people of color and the negative effects it has on their physical and mental health. As a result, she has created her podcast. She's the host of this podcast, and it's entitled My Silence Is Not for Sale. The platform provides an opportunity for people to highlight untold stories of those who have stood up to negative workplace environments and succeeded in reclaiming their lives. She is currently writing 2 books entitled My Silence Is Not for Sale, Candid Conversations and Solutions for Hostility, Microaggression, and Gaslighting in the Workplace, and another book called Move Over Hamster, Microaggressions and Gaslighting. Move Over Hamster, There's a New Sister in Town, a 10-step guide to reclaiming your soul and indulging in respite now, which is co-written by psychologist and therapist Nakisha Tolbert Banks. Andrea is also a co-owner of the curated beach accessory brand Minnesota Moments, which celebrates self-care, emotional, and physical wellness. In January 2022, she published her first children's book, The Brightest Star. And if you go back to our archives, you'll see this episode with Andrea and her father. It was a powerful, powerful episode. And it highlights her father's albinism. The book encourages people of all ages to celebrate differences and to be kind to one another. In April 2018, Andrea was diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer, which is now in remission. As a result, she now serves as a board member for Pink Forever, Ending Disparities, which seeks to reduce breast cancer, late-stage diagnosis, and death rates for Black women in Indianapolis. She is also a board member for Morning Light, which provides end-of-life care for financially insecure residents, and Indy Hygiene Hub, which supports families with basic household needs. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome our guest today, Miss Andrea Morehead.
Hello.
Andrea,
Hello.
how you doing today?
I am fabulous today. How are you? Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction.
Well, you know what? It's your life. It's your life. So I read exactly what you have been
Right?
doing in life. You know, what have you been up to since our last interview? I know we had your dad. I mean, you guys talked about albinism and the
Hmm.
impact it had on his life, the things he went through as being an albino. And so, what have you
Hmm.
been doing since that time?
Oh my goodness. I don't even know where to start. Let's see. What have I been doing? I've been trying to save every Black woman in America.
Ooh, that's a task. That's a
That's
task.
a
That's a
task. That
task.
is
That's
the
a
task.
task.
Yeah, you know what? I've been busy working as the anchor, if you will, for Rejoice Financial. So I come
I
back to
saw that.
Indianapolis about once a month for about 3 days, and I do stories about nonprofits in Indianapolis and across the state, telling the wonderful stories about what they're doing in our communities and how you can give your money, how you can also volunteer to help those nonprofits continue to thrive. And I'm also, you might notice every once in a while, if you ever are watching HSN, I am a brand ambassador for a number of home decor and clothing brands. So yeah, every once in a while I'll go on the air and you'll see me on there hawking trees or whatever it is. And so
Yeah,
I'm just having a phenomenal time. And of course, as you mentioned, I'm writing as well. So I'm busy, busy, busy. And I'm
good stuff.
loving every minute of my life now because I literally am choosing who I work with. And that's not a privilege. That should be the right of everyone for us to choose who we work with.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I can tell. I mean, there's a glow that you have about you. You know, before we came on, you were in the purple room, and I just said, hey, you know what? There's a new glow about you that I see that that no one can really take away. But I want to get to the meat and potatoes of this. Many
Oh yeah.
people are seeing you right now, and they're saying, you know what? We came home and watched her every day
Hmm.
because she was the person who really represented anchors in Indianapolis. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to coffee shops, I've gone to grocery stores, and I've seen people who I know and they say, "Hey, what happened to Andrea Morehead being on the news?" I mean,
Yeah.
you were that one. And so I think that, and I know you've been doing your thing on your podcast, but
Mhm.
I think that people want to know um, why you mysteriously just disappeared from
I
from the
disappeared.
limelight.
I totally disappeared. I mean, literally, when I say I dropped the mic, I literally dropped the proverbial mic, the real mic. I literally walked out. And it was, for my podcast, My Silence is Not for Sale. One of the first things that I say to everyone is, I'm sorry. My departure was not the kind of departure that I would ever want for anyone. I never thought that that would be the way that I would leave, but I literally had to walk away from the career. Now, I won't say the career. I walked away from the job because the career, I still have the career.
Mhm.
No one can take away the gifts and the talents that God has given me. But I walked away from a job because the environment was toxic. It was a hostile work environment. And on my podcast slash YouTube show, I
Mhm.
am literally outlining what I endured for over 15 years. I mean,
Wow.
when I got there, I was 29 years old back in 1999. I came in as a
Wow.
5:30 and the 10 p.m. anchor, and here I sit in front of you as a 54-year-old woman. I mean, I was there for 21 years.
Wow.
And when I think about how you all, the people in Indianapolis and across around the state of Indiana, you all really allowed me to grow up in front of you. I mean, I came in as a
True.
little baby. I was a newbie, and I was so excited and full of life and so, full of vigor and excited about being in my hometown working as an anchor. And over the years, I was promoted, and we'll get to that a little bit later
Sure.
in
Sure.
terms of why I also left was because of the hostile work environment. It just got to the point where I've been holding so much of the turmoil inside. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it made me sick. I know the stressors and the stress and everything that I was going through made me sick. That's why I got cancer. And I don't care what
Sure.
anyone says. They're like, no, that doesn't happen. Yeah, it does. There's a reason why it's called dis-ease or
Yes.
you have a disease. It's because your body is not at ease. It is diseased. And for 15 years, I was going through a silent battle that only my mom and dad and my family and very close friends like you all knew about.
Mhm.
It was a very well guarded secret. So while people saw me on the air laughing and, doing what I do, being who I am, I was natural. That was me. I was authentic. But I was battling a very silent battle behind the scenes. And that was dealing with the
Yeah.
microaggressions, the lies, the gaslighting, the lack of promotion, or when I finally got a promotion, telling me that I was not going to get the financial promotion and reward that comes along with it. And over a period of time, the aggregate of all of these experiences just really affected my mental health. I mean, I can't put it any
Sure.
other way. I
Sure. Sure.
literally, at some times, Dix, I could literally see my body at the bottom of the mountain. Like I could see it.
Mm.
And one of
Wow.
my foot was leaning on the edge. And I just
Sure.
told Archie, I said, babe, something's going on. I said, I don't know what else to do. Stories that I had written um, were taken away from me. Stories that were completed were lost. And all of a sudden, I would have to go and reshoot. Stories that were slated to air, I was told we're not going to air them without giving me really any explanation. So here I am working, struggling to do my job, and the powers that be were intentionally preventing me from doing my job. And it was only in, what was this? Maybe it was May of 2019 when something very egregious happened. And I said, I got to go talk to someone because, I
Yeah.
can pray as much as I can pray. I've got faith. My mom and dad are pastors. I was talking to
Right.
my husband and talking to Archie and my mom and dad. And I just couldn't figure out, how do I navigate this environment? And I said, I got to go see someone because I don't know if I'm going to make it. When I tell
Sure.
you that my soul was broken, my
Mhm.
humanity had been stripped away from me from all of these egregious and unconscionable behaviors. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I went to a therapist, and for over a year and a half, almost 2 years, I saw four different experts, if you will, in the therapy
Sure.
field,
Sure.
just to understand, is this me? Is this all in my head?
Mm.
Am I making a big deal out of it? Am I am I being am I not being fair to other people because of how I feel? Are these feelings legitimate? And I had to go see people to help walk me through all of these transgressions by other people
Sure.
to understand that what I was dealing with. And I'm telling you, when I say it was a light bulb moment,
Sure.
my therapist said, honey, you have been enduring classic abuse. And when
Mm.
she said the word abuse, it just clicked. I went, you're absolutely right. But let me tell you, that very first time, I was nervous seeing the therapist. I didn't know, I had never been to a therapist before in my life. I didn't know that my mental health was suffering. I think intellectually I knew it, but I
Sure.
didn't know it. I just knew something didn't feel right. And I knew my body was reacting to the negativity. And when I went in to Miss Mashara Winston, who I will tell you
Mhm.
literally saved my life and saved my soul. And I'm
Wow.
going to actually have her on the podcast to talk about what
Sure.
we talk about, because I think it's important for people to understand the questions and the probing and what going to a therapist really entails. And
Sure.
in the Black community, a lot of us, we are told, just pray it away. It's going to go
That's
away.
right.
God's
That's
going to
right.
help you. We put our faith, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have faith. Obviously, we should, but I needed someone to hear me who was objective, not my family member, not my pastor, not my husband, not my sister, not my
Right.
in-laws. I didn't need family. I needed someone who was totally objective, who didn't know my story until I told her what was going on, and for her to objectively listen and put herself in my shoes and objectively help me to understand that what I was going through was abuse. And
Yeah.
when that moment came, when she said that word, I literally said, you're exact, that's what it is. And
Wow.
in my mind, I began really working on myself, working on my own level of courage, working
Sure.
on my own internal reservoir, knowing when I needed to speak, when I didn't need to speak, knowing how to take care of, information, things that were happening, saving texts, saving emails, all of that.
Sure.
Not that I was trying to build a case, but I wanted to make sure that I had all of the pertinent information that I needed, because I knew that how I was being treated was wrong. It
Sure.
was wrong. It was simply wrong. It was racist. It was discriminatory. It was gaslighting. It's all the X's, should I say, the isms that you can think about. That was my situation.
Yeah.
And, I tell people, say, well, are you afraid? I'm like, what do I have to be afraid of? One thing people need to always understand is the truth is always a defense. They can
Absolutely.
lie all they want to, but the truth is always a defense. And they want to go to court, take me to court because I got the
Right.
truth. But they're never going to do that because they know what they did was intentional.
Sure.
And so I'm spending my time now really helping other people. I want to share my story so that other women, especially Black women, other people, because this is really a people problem.
Sure. Sure.
And, from a people problem, there's also that separate racial discriminatory problem that goes on for us as Black women and Black men and people of color. And I just wanted to add some real context and real storytelling to the reality of what so many of us go through. And we suffer from it and we suffer in silence and we don't talk about it. I mean, we talk about it to each other. You're like,
Right.
girl, listen, these people, or, you're sitting in the parking lot before you walk in and you're like, oh,
Right.
Lord, a shield. You're putting on
Right.
that full armor of God trying to walk in because
Yeah.
you're going to be dealing with the microaggressions. And as much as we try to navigate around it, it really begins to mess, if you will, with your mind. It
Yeah.
affects your
Yeah.
it affects your mental health. And so that's where I am right now. I'm all about
Yeah.
helping us understand the realities of microaggressions, gaslighting, hostile work environments.
Sure.
It's really
Sure.
workplace bullying. And 76.3 million people around the nation are dealing with workplace bullying.
Yeah.
Over
Yeah.
30% of people are dealing with it on a daily basis. And yet we don't talk about it. It's
Yeah.
like this little
Yeah.
thing, like we know what's going on, but nobody wants to talk about it. No one wants to hold people accountable
Yeah.
because companies are concerned with mitigating their liability, meaning the
That's right.
financial statements, if you will. They're like, oh, we don't see anything, or they don't do anything because they believe that if we don't respond to your emails, if we don't do anything, then it never happened. And
Yeah.
I'm never going to be the person who allows someone to dictate my life in that way. And for me, it was a moment of courage. It was a moment of saying, how do I want to live the rest of my life?
That's right.
Here I am going through cancer. Thank God I'm still in remission. And I kept saying, so I've got through this battle. Now I got to go back to work to battle with these people.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
God says, no, that's not what I have for you. This is
Sure.
your ability. You have a right to thrive. Thriving is not a privilege for a select few. Thriving should be for everyone. And I literally walked out on June 5th, 2020. It was the last story I did was about George Floyd. And for
Wow.
me, it was a moment of there's no better way, no better time than to leave than right now.
Sure.
Because that whole moment represented for me not being believed, like George Floyd, when he said, what are you doing? When he said,
Yeah.
I can't breathe. And
I
that
can't breathe.
next,
Right.
I can't breathe. I felt like I literally could not breathe.
Wow.
And
Wow.
after that story, it aired during the 6 o'clock p.m. broadcast. I was done at 6:30. It was a Friday night. My producer called me and says, okay, that was a great job. I had a part two that was supposed to air at 11 o'clock. And in that moment, Dix, literally, God spoke to me and said,
Wow.
this is it.
Wow.
Because it was so
Wow.
appropriate for me to
Sure.
lead with a story that literally spoke volumes about who I am as a person, how I was feeling, what I was not receiving. I wasn't being believed, my dignity, my humanity. I wasn't being
Sure.
respected as a person. And I just said, I'm out. I'm done. And I walked
Wow.
downstairs. I hadn't even told Archie. Nobody knew because it was a in the moment,
Sure. Sure.
in the moment decision. And it was 6:37. I remember looking at my phone. I hung up the phone. She says, let me know what you're going to be doing for the weekend. Send me an email and we'll talk about what you're going to do for Monday. And I said, okay. She says, we'll let your piece for tonight at 11 o'clock run by itself, meaning I don't have to be on the 11 o'clock show
Sure.
to
Sure.
introduce it or tag it out. And I said, that's perfect. And I hung up the phone and I walked downstairs. I told Archie, I said, call our attorney. I'm never going back. He
Yeah.
called
Yeah.
me the next day, that Saturday morning, and said, Andrea's never coming back. And I've never stepped back inside that building.
Wow. Wow. You know what? Historically, we've been taught, and I'm not gonna say all of us, but some of us have been taught to assimilate and acculturate with environments that may be toxic. And so as a black man, as a black woman, we have to say, well, if we're going to feed our families, these things must be required for us to
Yeah.
be able to fit into the box that's been created for us in
Mhm.
terms of organizations. And so there may be someone who's saying, hey, you know what, I'm not gonna say token, but I'm the person who, hey, I'm trying to climb the corporate ladder. I don't care about all this. What do you say to that person? Because you know what, they obviously have to go through some difficult times when no one is watching.
Mm, such a great question. This whole conversation that the world and especially America is having about DEI, meaning diversity, equity, and inclusion. So many times when we are hired, people believe that we are a token hire, meaning that we're not qualified for the job, but we're hiring you because you fit our so-called DEI initiatives. We want to make sure that we have people of color. We want to make sure that we're diverse. But what they fail to realize is we're not just qualified. We're more than qualified because as blacks, and let's just keep it real, we're having a real conversation. We
Mhm.
are all told that you have to be 10 times better. So when
Sure.
I come to the table, you best believe my best is better than your best.
Hmm.
My best
Hmm.
is always going to be better than your best
Right.
because I have to be better than you. So sorry about that. Oh, that's Rico. But he appears on the podcast very a
Okay.
lot.
Is that
So
that the, is
Rico,
that is the dog? The dog?
that's Rico, my little Shih Tzu.
Yeah.
So knowing that, I think about the depositions and their excuses for why I was treated differently. They actually had the nerve to say, well, Andrea was coming to work unprepared.
Oh. Okay.
Andrea didn't come to work with story ideas. Andrea, or we only gave photographers. The reason why she wasn't getting photographers is because we give photographers to the people who come in with a game plan. I mean, the gaslighting and the lies
Yeah.
were just crazy. And it was interesting because I sat there during the depositions, and as we can do, especially as Black women, let's keep it real. We have a little look. And I sat there, and it was so interesting to just watch them squirm. Like that
Yeah.
was the best for me because you can tell they were trying to create a storyline that really they were lies. The storylines were lies, but they say it in such a way that I think they really believe it. They really want to believe that because they know that there was no legitimate reason why my stories weren't being aired, why I didn't have access to photographers when I requested them,
Oh wow.
why stories were passed over, why a franchise took 6 months for me to do, but yet my co-anchor, who happens to be a white woman, she was allowed to do pretty much whatever she wanted to. She was
Oh wow.
dictating what I was doing. And I found this out because she was technically demoted off of the 6 p.m. I, after 15 years, was finally promoted to the 6 p.m.
Sure.
And instead of getting what most people would think would be a public promotion, meaning there's a press release, people internally know that you've been promoted to the 6, and the community knows that you've been promoted to the 6. They didn't do any of that.
Oh
They didn't
wow.
do any of that. But they gave her a managerial role and then told me, you don't get a financial promotion because this is duties as assigned.
Oh
And,
wow.
it reminded me of being, the good old days of, well, I shouldn't call them good old days, but the old days, the historical
Mhm.
days of sharecropping. And I just said, what I'm not going to do is continue to show up, do great work, be professional, continue to bring ratings in for your station. You're
Right.
making money off of my name and my likeness, but you don't want to share.
Oh
You
wow.
don't want to treat me right. You don't want to hold people accountable. So what am I left to do? Why should I stay? This isn't working
Hmm.
for me. And so I
Sure.
tell people all the time, you can divorce your job.
Hmm.
You can divorce your job. Getting a divorce can be an issue of one party. Only one party needs to agree that they don't want to be there anymore.
That's right.
Just
That's right.
they can come around and say, we're going to dismiss you, or we're reducing, our employment force, or we're going to let you go, or whatever the case may be. We can also say, I'm out of here. I don't want to
Right.
work for you anymore. We can actually choose. So when it comes to DEI, it's not, we're not tokens. We are doing our jobs. The
Sure.
reality is the powers that be don't want to respect who we are as professionals.
Sure.
And again, I just had had enough and it was time to walk away. And I'm literally thriving in a way that I knew was possible because I had worked in great places before. So I knew that this was a little different. But, my situation was really complex because when I got there back in 1999, when the main female anchor decided to retire, there was this belief that I would be kind of a sin to the 5, 6, and 11.
Sure.
And
Sure.
instead, what they decided to do, the game changed. All of a sudden, it's, oh, we're not going to have an A and a B team. We're going to have all four anchors are now going to be equal. So, in essence, we're going to bring somebody else in who doesn't look like you. We're going to put them at the number one show at 6 p.m. And you basically just do what we tell you to do. So for 15 years, I didn't say a word, but I knew what that was all about.
Hmm.
I continued to work. I continued to show up, be professional, do my job. And when it was time when they finally decided to promote me 15 years later, it was a slap in the face. And I just thought, you know what? The days of sharecropping are over. I'm not
Sure.
going to do your bidding for
Sure.
you. I'm not going to bring you ratings. I'm not going to make you money. And you're taking advantage of me. And I'm just supposed to sit back and be okay with that.
Sure.
Those days
Sure.
are over.
Sure. I like to kind of dig a little bit deeper into what you just talked about.
Mhm.
There are some folks, who understand that, the work environment has not always been the best. It's always leaned, more towards one side than the other. What message can we, or what, if you think about something that can be created to create dialogue, because I think what one thing that's missing is honest and authentic dialogue between those who pull the purse strings versus those who drive the business. We both know that employees drive businesses, not leaders and things of that nature. And so, in your opinion, based on what you're building with your podcast, My Silence is Not for Sale, what do you feel needs to happen to bridge some gaps that may exist that's kind of uncomfortable for people to talk about?
Yeah, nothing changes until we have uncomfortable conversations. I mean, think about it from a historical standpoint. If we look at the civil rights movement, none of that was comfortable. It wasn't. I mean, Rosa Parks, it wasn't comfortable. Standing up to the powers that be, it's never comfortable. Telling people that change has to happen and change must happen, and we demand change. It doesn't happen unless we are involved, and we cannot be involved if we're not clear about what the mission is. And we can't be clear what the mission is if we're not discussing what the issues and the problems are.
Sure,
And
sure,
so, yes, it might be uncomfortable for them, but if we don't have these conversations, then nothing will change. Everything will remain the same. And so, my purpose of being able to talk about this is to give agency to all of us that it is okay for us to have these uncomfortable conversations. If we don't, then we will never improve. And I believe that all of us have a right to thrive. And so, yes, is it uncomfortable for me to talk to someone about, your implicit bias? It's not uncomfortable for me, but it might be uncomfortable for the person I'm talking to. But if
sure.
they don't do their work, then nothing changes. Is it an uncomfortable conversation to talk about the fact that in 21 years, I never once had a Black manager. I never once had a person of color who was a news director, an executive producer, someone who was sitting at the table managing the daily, ins and outs of the day at
Sure.
at the TV station. Those days of not just sitting at the table, but being able to have influence over what we cover, how we cover it,
Right.
making those decisions, those major decisions that affect all of our lives. If we're not at the table and if we're not at the table and we're not part of the conversation, then nothing changes. So the
Sure.
level of discomfort is really on them. And I think that really tells more and speaks more about who they are and the fact that they don't want to make changes because they know that they're in a position of power and authority and they decide who gets to sit at the table. And if
Wow.
they don't want people who look like us, what can I do? What can I say? I mean, I can say that's unfair, but they run the show. It's kind of like when you go to Vegas and people say the dealer always wins. I mean, the dealer always wins. It's their game, it's their table. I might win a couple of, couple of times, couple of hands here and there,
Sure,
but at the
sure,
end of the day, the house will win. The house
sure,
always wins. It was their house. It wasn't my house. And that's when I said, I need to create and build my own house.
sure. You're writing a book right now entitled "My Silence Is Not for Sale," and you also have a podcast. Talk
Right?
about how that title originated and why is this so
Yeah.
significant to your mission to transform lives.
Well, after I left on June 5th, 2020, we began the EEOC process, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I filed against the station. And we had to go through that process first for, it took about maybe 6 or 7 months. There was a mediation process where, the powers that be, and I was there along with my husband and the mediator, and we talked about the issues. And it became very, very clear to me that they were never interested in holding people accountable. They said, well, the general manager and the former general manager and the news director, they all want you to come back. And I kept saying to myself, yeah, but you're not talking about the changes that I'm asking that need to be made, holding people accountable, including the news director. In fact, all three of them, all of them were complicit in allowing the lack of accountability to take place. And they were also involved in what I call the cover up
Mhm.
of trying to create a scenario and a narrative that just wasn't right, that would really relies, and making sure that they were protected. They wanted to protect their own jobs. They wanted to protect their friends. And of course, they don't look like me. I was
Sure,
not part of that in crowd. And so self-preservation is something else. When people are trying to save their own lives, they will pretty much do, not everyone, but they will do whatever they have to do to save and protect
sure,
themselves. But
sure.
during that mediation process, the general manager made a statement that I will never ever forget. And I want people to understand that I'm in a business where it's all about sound bites. When I'm going out and covering stories, we have a short amount of time. We're in and out. We've got to get the story. I'm running back to the station. I'm looking at the tapes and I'm putting it all together. But as I'm doing that interview, I'm also listening for what we call sound bites. So that way I'm like, okay, I'm going to use that sound bite. I'm going to use what this person said here. So that way, when I get back to the station, I know exactly what I'm going to use. I can pull that sound out, write my story, give it to the editor. We're on at 5 o'clock. So we
Sure.
don't have a lot of time to turn stories around. So I've lived my life in sound bites. And I remember sound bites that stick out from stories that I did with President Obama
Sure.
and First Lady Michelle Obama. Like, I remember those conversations. So my life is always in sound bites. And there's one thing he said was that we're not going to give you a golden parachute.
Mm,
And
mm,
basically what he was saying is, we're not going to pay you any money. We're not going to settle out of court because we don't want you to ride off into the sunset and live your better than best life. And so it
mm.
became apparent to me that while they're they were talking about money, trying to mitigate their liability, and I was asking for accountability. And they're two totally polar opposites. The
Sure.
two cannot coexist. And so we go through the mediation process. I'm given the right to sue in federal court. There are a lot of legal things that go on between the scenes or behind the scenes in trying to decide whether or not I'm actually going to get to go to a jury trial. And during this process, we finally were able to depose them, which of course they fought naturally. And for me, that was a win. It was a win to be able to sit there and watch them squirm and lie, and to watch how far people will go to hide the truth and to not
Mm.
hold people accountable. But when I realized that that's what it was all about for them, it became clear to me that during that the settlement time when we were deciding, okay, there are two options. Both parties are going to put their summary judgments out, present it to the judge. The federal judge is going to read theirs, read mine, and decide, okay, who do I believe? Does this need to continue to go forward? And it's a very tricky time. You wonder whether or not, if the judge decides to err, or to vote for the not vote, but to say, okay, we're going to go ahead and give and grant them summary judgment, which means, Andrea, you can't sue them anymore, and the case is over and case is dismissed, and they, in fact, win. I had to really weigh the cost between what's really important. Is it more important for me to walk away with whatever, they offered and take my lumps and keep moving? Or can this moment be used to help other people? And so on a Thursday before that Monday, when we had a 12:30 p.m. deadline to let them know whether or not I would accept their settlement offer, I took a walk and I literally prayed and I said, God, what do you want me to do with this? Because for me, it was clear. For them, it was about money. They were trying to mitigate their financial liability. And for me, my whole desire was to kind of parade all of the players, if you will, in court, because I wanted the truth to be told. I wanted everyone to hear what really happened. And I did not want to, I didn't want the judge to say, nothing to see here, Andrea. Sorry, you lose. And for them to walk away. I wanted to I wanted to raise awareness about the truth. I wanted people to know what really, really happened. And so for me, it became, if they had won or if I had taken the settlement, I would have had to have signed an NDA, meaning I could never talk about the case again. I take the money and I ride off into the sunset. And it just became clear to me as I was walking. I said, God, what do you want me to do? And he audibly, when I say I heard his voice, he literally said, don't do it, because I want you to use this for greater good. And at the time, I was reading John Lewis's memoir, Walking with the Wind. And
Sure.
there's a part in his book on page 64 that literally set the tone for me in terms of what I was going to do. And he said, there's sometimes in life, there's this what you call the spirit of history, where there's something that pulls you, that pulls you so hard that you can't shake it off. There's a moment, there's a spirit that draws you that says, I need you to do this for the greater good of mankind. And that is it. So for me, I answer the call to the spirit of history. What I'm
Sure.
doing is part of history. What I'm doing, trying to help people understand what workplace bullying is all about, gaslighting, how to walk away, how to plan your case if you decide
Sure.
to sue your employer, what to do even afterwards. How do you go through the process of getting therapy? How do you fund it? How do you fund your legal case? Because suing, being part of the judicial system, is very expensive. And
Sure.
no one
Sure.
asks for this. And so for me, it was my silence. I'm not going to allow you to pay me off to make me quiet about the truth. I'm a
Wow.
journalist.
Wow. That's right.
I'm a
That's right.
journalist, so you can't
Have
pay
been.
me. My
Have
silence
been.
is
No.
not for sale. I'm not going to trade my silence for money. So what I'm doing is helping other people, women, Black people, it doesn't matter, just people in general, understand what their rights are and how do we navigate a system that was not made for us to really be part of. And
Yeah.
that's the truth.
I can remember you doing a video. You were on a deck, and you sat down. There were flowers behind you,
Mhm,
and you announced, that you had cancer.
mhm.
And so during that time, you were going through whatever you were going through at that time. And so talk about your mental state at that time as you delivered that message to the citizens of Indianapolis.
You know what? That was such, like, I remember it like it was yesterday. Um, it was interesting because the day before, we were in Florida on a little vacation. It was in April of 2018, and I had to come back to MC an event that was raising money for breast cancer, or for cancer support community, and it's for all kinds of cancers. And that was on a Saturday night, and on Sunday, I'll just be real. I was taking my bra off, and all of a sudden, I felt like a little pain. I was like, "Ooh." So I had Archie take a look at it, and he touched it. And I was like, "Oh, that really hurts."
Mhm.
And so I look back at that. Had it not been for that event that Saturday night, the night before, I probably would never have thought, oh, well, let me go get it checked out. I
Right.
had never had a mammogram, unfortunately. And I look back at that and I think the reason is because I was just so busy working. Life,
Sure.
life
Sure.
is life. You're busy working, you're trying to, you're taking care of the kids, you're here and there.
Sure.
And a lot of times as women or just people in general, we put our health on the back burner. And
Mhm.
I was one of those people where I was doing stories about breast cancer, doing stories about taking care of your health, but I was not. But it was also living in silence with all of the microaggressions that were going on.
Sure.
So it was all happening at the same time. And so what I remember when I delivered the announcement, actually I didn't. They announced it on TV. Um, they made the announcement because as soon as I found out that I had cancer, immediately I was like, I'm out. I got to
Yeah,
start
yeah,
taking chemo.
right.
I had the most aggressive form for Black women, which is triple negative breast cancer.
Sure,
We have
sure.
almost a over 50% return rate. And I just said, I got to fight this. Thank God I was stage 1. But I just think about, had I continued to ignore the pain, had I continued to just keep working and trying to navigate the hostile environment, I may not be sitting here talking to you today.
That's right.
So all of that was happening at the same time. And it just was a moment for me where I thought, okay, Lord, what do I need to do? Um, chemo, then it was the surgery followed by the radiation. Then I had another year of immunotherapy treatment. So, I mean, it was a 2.5 year journey. I just got my
Wow.
port out last year.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was a long physical journey for me. But I look at that and I remember thinking to myself during chemo, and even when I was in the bed at home trying to recuperate when my bones were brittle, I was, just physically ill as if anyone has ever had to care for someone with cancer. I
Sure,
mean,
sure.
it's horrible. I
Yeah,
don't wish it on anyone. But I kept saying, Lord, I was making deals with God. I said, God, please save me. Because I had the
yeah,
time,
yeah,
I had
yeah.
a sixth grader, sixth, seventh grader. And I said, I got to be around for Ian. I got to be
Sure.
around for my husband. I got to be around for my family. Like there's so much more for us to do. And we weren't even supposed to have children. So Ian came, he was a surprise kid. And so I thought, God, you can't give me this blessing and then take me away from him. You can't take his mother away. So I fought. I fought as much as I could, as hard as I could, so that I could still be here. And during that time, I said, God, if you save me, I promise I will continue to dedicate my life to serving you, but
Sure,
also serving other people, because that's what journalism is. It's a service. I believe it's a
sure,
ministry. It's a ministry for information, a ministry to raise awareness. It's a ministry to inspire people and for people to aspire as well, to
sure,
be
sure,
better in life. And
sure.
that's why I got into the business. And it's also to hold institutions and people accountable.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it just hit me. I said, well, when I get out of this, because I knew I was going to survive, God said, girl, I'm going to let you live. I'm going to let you live, but I got some work for you to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I
Oh yeah.
made that bed, he said, okay, all right, I heard you. I, I heard you. I just didn't know the magnitude of the fight that I was going to be in after I came out, after, I had gone through the radiation. I came back. I was promoted, of course, as we know, didn't get the financial reward that comes along with it. Nobody in the city knew that I was actually promoted to the 6 p.m. anchor. I'm like, I did all this for 15 years and it just started hitting me. I'm like,
Right,
wow, I'm now alive, but I'm not happy.
right.
I mean, it was really as simple as that. I'm alive, but now I'm not even happy doing this. I'm not happy being here anymore. And I just knew that there was a better life. And that's when I began my own personal journey of holding people accountable. When I
Sure,
understood
sure.
what was going on, it became kind of funny where I'm like, wow, they are really, really, they don't even know who I am. They have no idea that I know what they're doing. And
Right.
the more I became, the stronger I became, the more resolute I became in who I was as a person, what I
Sure,
wanted, what I deserved. It became easy. It was an easy decision for me to walk away. And I just said, God, I trust you. I
sure,
trust that you will replenish, that you will restore, that you will give everything back to me that I lost and then some.
sure.
Now, has the 3 year journey since I left been easy? Absolutely not. Have there been moments of depression and like, I don't know, God, what are you doing? Absolutely. But I do it all over again because I'm the happiest I've ever been. The
Yeah,
happiest. And I
yeah.
look back at that and go, that was pretty compared to the cancer, like that was worse than the cancer fight.
Oh wow. That's
It
a
was
big
worse than
statement.
the cancer
That's
fight.
a big statement. That's a big
It
statement.
it was
Wow.
worse than the cancer. And I know for a lot of people, they're like, okay, Andrea, you looked happy all the time when you were on the air. And I'm like, well, I'm a professional.
Yeah.
And there used to be a funny joke. My mom and dad would say, girl, you were so good tonight and you were laughing and yucking it up. And I mean, you should get an Oscar. Like if only people knew. And I'm like, I know, if only people knew.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's the silence that I'm
yeah.
talking about is that we're not telling them exactly how we feel. We're not
Right.
telling them I need you to hold people accountable. We're not
Sure.
holding management or HR accountable. We're just going with the flow because at the end of the day, we're trying to get our bag. And I get it. we're working for livelihoods. We're working
That's
because
right.
it's what we love to do, but we're also working to maintain a livelihood. And walking away from my livelihood, it was a huge risk. But
Wow.
my soul was worth more than money.
That's right.
Hence, my silence is not for sale.
There you go. You know what? There's someone who's watching, this episode,
Mhm.
and they have gone through probably what you've gone through, and maybe even more. What words of encouragement do you have for them to move forward, to never give up, to persevere, to be tenacious, to address the challenges they may be facing that's impacting them, not just physically but emotionally and even mentally?
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
You touched on the words that I love, which is, perseverance and never giving up and pushing through. If there's anything a cancer fight will teach you is how to push through. It takes away the fear. I mean, you're fearful in the beginning, but over time you begin to build a spirit of resiliency and a spirit of perseverance. And you begin to think, okay, if I can beat cancer, if I can win this battle, everything else is easy. I mean, really, if I can
Right.
win this, that's small potatoes. I got that. But I think for me, it is the notion, and this is why I'm being outspoken about what happened to me. It's because we have been suffering in silence for so long. We hold it in. We talk about it with our girlfriends. We talk about it to our spouses, our partners, our friends. We're on the phone when we get home, or we're in the car. As soon as we get in the car, we're like, girl, let me tell you what happened today. But we're not telling the people who really need to hear it. And
That's
what
right.
we're doing is we're actually complicit in allowing the behavior to continue because we're not holding people accountable. We're not having those uncomfortable conversations. We're not holding HR accountable. We're not holding our leaders and managers accountable. We're not holding companies accountable to create a safe environment for all of us to thrive in. And it just became clear to me that as I mentioned earlier, it was just time to go. So for someone who was going through a similar scenario, I say surround yourself with people who get it, who understand, who
Hmm.
will validate your feelings. I think that's what I really needed was for someone to validate, someone who wasn't my family to validate that what I knew intellectually and in my heart was real because I was confused. I'm like, wait a
Sure.
minute, is
Sure.
it me or is this them? Or is it a combination of the two of us? Or what more can I do? And when I realized that there was nothing more that I could do, that it was clearly abusive, it was time for me to start planning my exit strategy and to walk away. And so that's why it's important for us to have these conversations, for us to
Sure.
really talk about what really happened, to speak the truth. Because when we speak truth, it releases the negativity, the toxins that we have stored up inside of our bodies because
Sure.
we've been holding on for so long. But when we talk about it, you realize that someone else is going through the same thing.
Sure.
Because a lot of times we think we're the only ones because we're afraid to speak truth to power. We're afraid that if we talk about it, we're going to get in trouble. If we mention it to someone, they're going to go tell somebody else, and then all of a sudden, I'm going to be retaliated against. Those are real fears because I
Sure.
was retaliated against. Those are real fears. But you have to love your life. You have to love yourself more than the fear. You have to have courage and you have to know that you deserve the best. You deserve the better than best life that anyone can offer you. And if you can't take care of yourself, if you don't do it yourself, no one else will. So my advice is to persevere, find resiliency, have courage, don't be afraid, speak to someone, a therapist, someone who understands what you're going through, who can validate your feelings, and to not be silent because when you speak it, you're allowing the truth to go before you, to prepare another place for you, to prepare another lane, to prepare a new
Sure.
journey. You're manifesting all of that. The universe is opening up to you. And I just said, Lord, I don't know how you're going to restore me, but I trust you. I trust you. And like I said, it's been difficult, but the other side is so much better than where I was before. I mean, I'm 54 and people keep telling me that I look younger than I ever did before. And it's because I'm happy. I am at peace. I have joy. And where there is joy, it's kind of like that song back in church, joy unspeakable and full
Yeah.
of glory. That's where I am in my life right now. There's nothing, there's no amount of money. There's no
There you
amount of
go.
money that ever shut me up from speaking the truth,
Right.
especially when I know my
Wow.
experience and my truth will help somebody else. That's my purpose in life. And
Wow.
God said, all right, girl, you made a promise. I'm going to hold you to it. And so
Do
here
your
I am.
thing. Do your thing. Ladies and gentlemen, hey, you've been listening to Miss Andrea Morehead, and we want to encourage you to visit her um, YouTube channel.
Mhm.
My silence is not for sale. And that's my silence is not for sale.com right there on the tickler. We want to encourage you. She has, and I told her, I said, you know what? I've watched some of your episodes and they are powerful.
Thank
You know what? This channel will do, and again, I know she's not doing this for numbers, but this channel will probably be one of the premier channels in YouTube
God.
university, the atmosphere, what have you, because it is powerful. She takes a very practical approach to what all of us have probably experienced at one time or another. And so again, we want to thank you for being who you are. You know,
You're
as
so
I've always told you, I can remember, being, on the beach in Florida,
come
and
on
I told you, I said, hey, I said, you know what? You are strong, you
back.
are resilient, you are a great mother, you are a great person, and you know what? My family and I, we are totally just excited to be around you guys when we are. And
Oh,
again,
we feel the same way about you guys. We do. We're so honored to call you friends and family.
absolutely, absolutely,
Friends and family. We are so, so honored. And I want to say something too, Dix, before we leave, is that, this isn't just about airing dirty laundry, because one, it's
sure,
not dirty. It just is what it is. It's
yeah,
the truth of what happened. But again, there's power in numbers. I believe when there's a collective, when we are together as a group, when have a collective voice of people, we are stronger than those naysayers. We are stronger than the bullies. We're stronger than the hostile work environments. We're stronger together. And when we work together to talk about this issue and we bring it into the forefront, this isn't just about airing the dirty laundry and the
sure,
stories.
sure,
This isn't just about victims coming forward and sharing their stories. This is using our stories to help create those uncomfortable conversations.
sure.
And now let's talk about the solutions. What are the solutions? We can talk about
All
it
right.
until we're blue in the face, but I'm all about what is the solution so that this doesn't have to happen to anyone else? What are the solutions so that victims as well as witnesses are protected, so that
Sure.
people feel comfortable coming forward, so that they're not going to be retaliated against? What are the solutions so that we can change laws so that instead of us going to HR, my idea is we need to create a independent body that investigates claims. So that way we're not relegated to HR, because their interest is to protect the company. It really is
Sure.
not.
Exactly.
Say that
Exactly.
HR is not your friend. And I think there are a lot of young people who don't realize that. And I say it again, hashtag HR is not your friend. Use them for onboarding, use
Yeah.
them for 401k information, use
Benefits.
them for disability information, use
Yeah.
them when you need to know, your PTO has changed, use them when you are signing up for new healthcare, whatever. But
Sure.
don't go to them and don't expect for them to necessarily be on your side. That's just the truth of the
Sure.
matter. And I'm
Sure.
sure that
Sure.
there are people in the HR department are going, that's not true. Well, 9 times out of 10, that is true.
Yeah.
So we are talking about how do you protect yourself if you're ever in a situation like this? And then what can we do from a state laws that will protect people from discrimination and bullying? And what do we need to do on a federal level? So I'm working with a group called End Workplace Bullying. They are right now pushing legislation in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Pennsylvania is now doing the same thing. I'm going to be there in early January, and I'm going to be meeting with legislators in Indiana so that we can have a similar legislation there to help protect
Sure.
witnesses
Sure.
and
Sure.
victims. Because this has to stop. It has to stop. It just seems as if the bad seeds are the ones that continue to unfortunately grow. And those of us who are the victims and witnesses, we're the ones who are not thriving. And we're the ones having to walk away. And that's just simply not fair. We need to
Sure.
be about the business of getting rid of the bad apples, the bad seeds, so that all of us can work in an environment that is productive and where we can
Sure.
thrive, where we can truly live and be our authentic selves.
Sure. It's funny. You mentioned. I know we got to get off here, but you
I
mentioned
talk all day long.
you mentioned no, no, but I'm a HR. Well, my background is HR, and you
Hmm.
know what? there's a whole nother layer of HR folks who experience the bullying, because you know what? If you don't play the game from an HR standpoint, that's a whole nother level of
I can't even imagine.
bullying, because I mean, because
Mhm.
again, HR is there to protect the organization
Yeah.
ultimately. And
Mhm.
so again, that's a whole nother episode. Maybe we can get some HR folks on here and talk about
Mhm.
that. But
Yeah.
hey, again, it's been truly a pleasure to have you on. And hey, we will
Yes,
have
sir.
to do this again. This is your second time on. And so
I know
this
the
time
second
you're
time
on by yourself. Make sure you
I'm
tell
by
your dad.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
Make
tell
sure you tell your
Daddy, say,
dad.
Daddy,
Make sure
you
you tell
missed
your
me.
dad I said room to the queue. All
You
right.
told me to tell you hello. You told me. Well, let me tell you, I'm excited about the future. And this is when I know that I'm doing the right thing. I wake up every morning and I have over a dozen emails, text messages, and or something in LinkedIn where people are asking me, can you give me advice? What can I do?
Sure.
Where are
Sure.
some resources? That's
Sure.
when I know that I'm doing the right thing. I've had people who used to work at that station who have sent me messages saying, it happened to me too. I just left. And they're looking at me going, wow, thank you so much for speaking up because I thought it was just me. Grown men and women who are still traumatized by the trauma. And when I know that I have helped them feel released, that I have given them the power to speak up,
Yeah.
I know I'm on the right path.
That's it. Well, you know what? You already a lawyer, so it sounds like we might need to, look at some stuff to help folks. I'll leave you alone. I'll leave you alone. Until next time. Hey, Angie, we love you. We'll talk to you soon.
Love you, love you, love you. Thank you all
All
so
right.
much. And of
Tell
course,
the
I'll come
family you say
whenever
hello.
you want. All right,
All
we'll
right.
do. Thanks, everybody. Okay, Rico, you ready to eat?
All right. Man, we have been going almost about an hour. And you know what? The conversation was fruitful. It was I've been looking forward to this conversation because, even as an HR professional, I've gone through some difficult times at an organization because I didn't, I guess, dance to the music. But nevertheless, we know that there are many people who experience difficulties in the workplace. And you know what? I would encourage you to visit the website, My Silence Is Not For Sale. Powerful, powerful, powerful information that is transformational, will make a difference in your life. And if you're in a position where you feel like you have nowhere else to go, let this be your platform to air out how you truly feel. Sometimes we don't have, as you heard our guest say, sometimes you can't go to your spouse. Sometimes you can't go to your partner. You can't go to a friend. And you need someone who will just listen to what you have to say and what you've been going through. This is the platform. We've been listening to Miss Andrea Morehead with My Silence Is Not For Sale. This is James the Orator here with Super Speak Sundays. We appreciate you listening in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you will get all the videos that we're going to be uploading. We got some exciting guests coming here in the near future. Hey, we love you. I know some of you may not hear that often, but we love you and we want you to be your very best. Until next time, we'll see you. Peace, blessings, and love. See you soon.